So we are really fortunate that in addition to David and Kamala, we've got a third musician here tonight. His name is Chet Gardiner, and he's from Hawaii. He flew in from Hawaii to be here. And you're what, 81 years old?
Yeah. He's freezing too.
And he has played on an amazing number of David's recordings. 142 songs they've played together since 2023. So Chet's going to do a couple of tunes by himself, and then we'll hear Ministry of Culture with all three of them. So please welcome Chet Gardiner.
I have a good excuse ever since my girlfriend dumped me when I built us a place in Hawaii. I've had a lot of free time, so. I toured for a while with Dave Lippman, and I learned this song from Dave back in GHW Bush days, and so I brought it up to date. This is the ballad of Donald J. Trump and all the things that he's done. Thank you. And thank you, Dave. The other Dave, Lippman, that is. Yeah, I lived in San Francisco for 42 years and froze, and then I moved to Tucson and made my meteoric decline in the folk business in Tucson. Went from main stage at the Tucson Folk Festival to not even getting booked in just 4 short years. And I think this is the song that did it. Now, this is the dreaded sing-along, and I'm serious about this. I'm supposed to warm you people up so that you'll sing along with David. My job. Give me that old time, give me that old time, give me that old time. It's good for me. That was your part, by the way. Yeah, you can clap along too. We'll do it that. Hold on. Let's practice it one more time. Give me that old time. Give me that old time. Give me that old time. It's good enough for me. We will break you out today, even though she's rather lazy and where you lady. That's good enough for me. Give me that old time. Give me that old time, old time. It's good enough for me. Let me fall into a groove. As God never know what to do. And guns and brass to shoot up. That's good enough for me. Give me that old time. That old time. That's good enough for me. This might be the verse that got me singing. Well, the Christians all home, 'cause they say their God is gone. Our God came 3 times to see them, and that's enough for me. Give me that old time. Give me that old time. Give me that old time. It's good enough for me. There's a Pete Seeger verse. We will worship like the good and bring strange fermented good and run and get through with that good enough for me. Give me that old time. Give me that old time. Give me that old time. It's good enough for me. The kid wants a religion. Reminds me when I used to take my daughter to the book club when she was 3. There are some that call it twice when we worship Malachi. They say it's not very jolly, but you will not fall. In that old time, in that old time, in that old time, it was good enough for Venus. Of the gods, she is the meanest. Hit me on my elbow, and that ball in that old time, in that old time, in that old time. It's good enough for me. In that old time, in that old time, in that old time. No, it was very interesting. David wrote this song called At the End of World War III, which you may have heard. And I loved it so much that I recorded two versions of it, one with just me and a guitar, and then the other where I put a whole band and World War III on it. And I sent them to David. And then about a month or two later, I got an email from David. And I've been a fan since the 90s, David, so I've been watching. I got the email back, and he wrote this song, Baby Jesus Sang and Rebel, and he wanted me to do the treatment to it. And that's how we did 142 songs. He would send me a guitar vocal or bouzouki vocal or whatever, mandola, and then I added all the rest of the instruments and mixed and mastered it. And then 3 days ago, YouTube made it all disappear. Yeah, boo-boo. So the first thing we did was David came over with Kamala and, oh gosh, the name is escaping. David, who is it? Lorna from Scotland, Kamala from Australia, and me from wherever I happen to be sitting, because he was on my farm. We recorded, I'll remember the name one of these days, Killing the Messenger. And we did those tracks live, and then we just kept doing it. And then all of a sudden, Shazam, it was 10 albums later, and now it's disappeared. But you're lucky tonight, you get to listen to the wonderful, beautiful and talented Kamala Emanuel from Australia. And she brought a friend along to accompany her, David Rovics.
Jobs and living in a tent when a house costs $1 million and you can't pay the rent. When politicians say they'll help, but it keeps getting worse each time the landlord lobby pulls the strings of the purse. When the human right to housing isn't even part of the debate, you know you're living in a failed state. When millions of citizens are spending half their lives locked up in a prison for trying to survive. When laws must be broken just to have a place to stay. When the prisons pay the senators to look the other way. If you have to be a criminal to put food upon your plate, you know you're living in a failed state. When you're facing climate breakdown, when the trees are all on fire, when half the country's underwater, when a climate change denier runs the nation. And the opposition party votes for oil rigs and pipelines. It's not so much a country as it is a corporation. Buckling under its weight, you know you're living in a failed state. When your nation is an empire facing daily blowback, and the only thing your leader can think to do is attack, bipartisan consensus that we need to spend $700 billion before the year's end on a military budget to make America great. You know you're living in a failed state. Every day some psycho with a gun has to open fire on a crowd before it's done. When a music festival becomes a free fire zone, and all they can say is it's okay now, he was acting alone. Buy some armor, pray to God, and hide behind a gate. You know you're living in a failed state. You know you're living in a failed state. You know you're living in a failed state.
Beautiful. So when Israel started killing all the Palestinians in Gaza after the Gaza ghetto uprising, I was thinking about historical parallels, and there have been so many. But one of the most striking was Minnesota, 1862.
He heard that they were on their way when the settlers came. Little Crow knew that nothing now would ever be the same. The treaties he agreed to, signed under duress, he watched as the land of the Indians was less and less and less. His people were left with a patch only 20 miles wide, a little bit of land by the Mississippi riverside, a little bit of land with a very uncertain fate once this place called Minnesota became a state. Little Crow went all the way to Washington, D.C., where he appealed his people's case to the highest authority. Then they took away half the land, allotted for his kin, and then even that little patch saw more settlers moving in. Little Crow watched them hunting and logging all the trees. He watched his people growing hungry. He watched the children freeze when their meager crops failed. He went in search of aid from the agents who had grown rich from the money that they made. What should have fed the people lined their pockets instead. Lincoln sent an investigator, and that's just what he said. The standard was corruption, treaties made to be broken, along with comforting words duplicitously spoken. Little Crow told his people, words bitter on his tongue. The agent had said his people could eat grass and their own dung. Peaceful coexistence could clearly last no more. He gathered up an army and set out to go to war. Warriors raided the stores of food that should have been theirs. They took guns and ammunition, put soldiers in their crosshairs. They won one battle after another, drove all the settlers out until divisions heading south were given a new route. Little Crow's uprising was finally suppressed, and the Indians of Minnesota were sent far off to the west, where they're part of the uprising. To the authorities it didn't matter, and they died of famine and disease. Little Crow was killed picking berries with his son, shot down by a settler out hunting with his shotgun. For handing in his scalp, the hunter made a dandy sum, and his bones were displayed in a museum. Little Little Crow was a leader, and it seems to me he made decisions when every option was impossibility. He had the choice to starve and die on what was left of the land, but he decided it was time to make a stand. Heard that they were on their way, and when the settlers came, Little Crow knew that nothing now would ever be the same.
Here's a better story. A story that might leave you thinking that humanity has hope, unlike so many of the others. There's a statue that they're I think in the process of constructing or putting up or whatever that erecting. Yeah. They erect statues. Yes, they're in the process of erecting in Toronto, and the timing is kind of wonderfully suspicious. It's a statue of a Canadian citizen named Joshua Glover, and this is a story about how Joshua became a Canadian. Gather round me, friends, I'll tell you a tale about the day one young man was taken off to jail and shipped north up Lake Michigan for a trial to see if he should be sent back to live in slavery. Life of bondage was what Joshua had seen, but then he left Missouri and drove to Racine, where he worked in a sawmill by the lake shore in Wisconsin in 1854. When the word got round, outrage spread. The idea of sending people back to the bondage they had fled was one that could not be allowed to stand, although it was the law of the land. Passed by the Congress 4 years prior, guaranteed to start a prairie fire, which was what would be in store in Wisconsin in 1854. Thousands went to Haymarket Square, the most people who had ever gathered there. In Racine, where they decided they'd go see how the trial would go up in Milwaukee. And when they got there and looked around, saw the thousands more people on the ground who had come on horseback, ready for war in Wisconsin in 1854. Jail turned out to be no match at all for all of the people who had answered the call. They laid siege to the place till they'd gotten their man. Then together the thousands they ran away from the cops and then onward forth. The Underground Railroad brought him north, so Joshua Glover would be a slave never more in Wisconsin in 1854. No more attempts would ever be made since that Milwaukee prison raid to enforce this federal law after the rising that everyone saw. It was dead in the water, and that's a fact. The Fugitive Slave Act. When all the people said what they stood for in Wisconsin in 1854. Gather round me, friends, I'll tell you a tale about the day one young man was taken off to jail and shipped north up Lake Michigan
for a trial to see if he should be sent back to live in slavery.
The United States military invaded Venezuela a few weeks ago and abducted the president. And a lot of people have been worried about this eventuality for a long time. And I wrote this song, I guess 12 or 13 years ago.
I think the wrong president was abducted.
The wrong president was abducted. Definitely. Yeah, Dharma said it was, not, a little messy, but good idea. Like
was elected, and like every time he ran, when his socialists took power, that's when the changes began. The opposition started attacking every forward move, but reforms went ahead, the people's welfare improved. A land of such riches that had always gone to so few was reaching places ignored since 1492 in Venezuela. Into the streets to stop the coup back then. They got the man that they elected back into power again. The Bolivarian Revolution became famous worldwide. Soon other socialist governments swept in a red tide. Between the Cuban doctors and the Venezuelan oil, billions got medical care, millions tilled the soil of Venezuela. Began the sanctions, Obama imposed more, a slow-burning, destabilizing economic war. Following the formula of the Chicago Boys team, used in many places to make economies scream. Oil prices plummeted, foreign holdings locked, invasions being planned, negotiations blocked in Venezuela. Revolution to Venezuela today, from the Seminoles to Salvador Allende. Look at their ankles, you'll see the chains. Imperial vampires, open veins. Those who stand up to the business elite, who cannot stand to see the workers in the driver's seat in Venezuela. Venezuela. In Venezuela.
I'm confused on this one.
Well, I wrote this song before social media was invented, so this song is evidence that holier than thou preachy leftists existed before Twitter. Hard to remember.
I don't drive a car because they run on gas, but if I did, it'd run on biomass. I ride a bike, or sometimes a skateboard, so fuck off all you drivers and your yuppie hordes, sitting all day in the traffic queues. I'm a better anarchist than you. I don't eat meat, I just live on moldy chives or the donuts that I found in last week's dumpster dive. Won't you people in that restaurant, I think you are so sad when you could have been eating bagels like the ones that I just had. I think it is a shame all the bourgeois things you do. I'm a better anarchist than you. I don't wear leather and I like my clothes in black, and I made a really cool hammock from a moldy coffee sack. I like to hop on freight trains, I think that is so cool. It's so much funner doing this than being stuck in school. I can't believe you're wearing those brand new shiny shoes. I'm a better anarchist than you. I don't have sex, and there will be no sequel because heterosexual relationships are inherently unequal. I'll just keep on moshing to anti-flag and crash until there are no differences in gender, race, or class. All you brainwashed readers, you just haven't got a clue. I'm a better anarchist than you. I don't believe in leaders, I think consensus is the key. I don't believe in stupid notions like representative democracy. Whether or not it works, I know it is the case that only direct action can save the human race. So when I see you in your voting booth, then I know it's true. I'm a better anarchist than you. I am not a pacifist, I like throwing bricks, and when the cops have caught me and I'm taking a few licks, I always feel lucky if I get a bloody nose, because I feel so militant and everybody knows. By the time the riot is all through, I'm a better anarchist than you. I'm a better anarchist than you. Open air, that's the one thing that distinguishes what has happened in Gaza right now compared to the time of the Third Reich and its crimes against any decency, against any sanity, against all the children, against all humanity. From Auschwitz to Gaza, there's no difference between babies and fighters on that side of the fence, the side where they starve because the food is kept out by the occupation. No others, no doubt, where people are dropping dead on the street. My conscience are struck of food on the street. From Auschwitz to Gaza, all night and all day, all the people inside just wasting away. Everyone waiting for death to arrive, shot or starved or burned alive, where each passing moment is punctured by groans of a million children as thin as their bones. From Auschwitz to Gaza, the outside world knew, and many lamented about what they might do while their leaders looked for money to be made in the arms trade. Once again, just like this, profiting from the apocalypse. From Auschwitz to Gaza, the stages of starvation are exactly the same under occupation. First the fat goes, then all the rest, the muscle, the marrow, the milk in the breasts of all nursing mothers, as in front of their eyes, their babies cry their last little cries. From Auschwitz to Gaza, under either command, all of the killing is entirely planned. Whether they call it a camp or a zone, it's all the same skin and bone. Whether they say work makes you free or humanitarian city, from Auschwitz to Gaza, the political line, from occupied Poland to Palestine. Leaders outside will say we weren't aware of the events of the horrors happening there. They'll shed a few tears and somberly then make a speech at the UN Auschwitz to Gaza, all over the place. The lies of the leaders who seek to save face, who say we would have acted if only we knew all that they claim they really would do. And no one will believe at the time when some foolish person says never again. From Auschwitz to Gaza.
At another time that the United States was committing genocide in another part of Asia, killing millions of people in Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam in an undeclared war that Congress did not even know about when it started, as far as Cambodia and Laos went. There was a lot of people marching around the streets in the country, a lot of people burning draft cards, a lot of great events happening to try to mobilize resistance and try to demilitarize the hearts and minds of the nation, emanating especially from places like San Francisco with the free festivals that had a tremendous impact on the whole culture throughout the continent and have been vilified and ridiculed ever since. But there were other people who just couldn't do the festivals and the marches and the draft card burning, and they just needed to do something that seemed a little more direct. And so my friend Al and his friend Clyde out in Virginia decided what they were going to do was join the Merchant Marine in order to lead a mutiny, in order to hijack a ship full of bombs so that they would not go to Vietnam to divert them. And that's exactly what they went about doing.
Gather round, I'll tell a story about a man I know, what he did across the ocean half a century ago. Death was raining from the skies all over Vietnam. Al and Clyde decided they had to try to stop the bombs. These two young men signed up to join the Merchant Marine, horrified by what they heard along with what they'd seen. They began to have discussions, they found a common goal. They joined the crew of the Columbia Eagle, and then they'd take control. The ship was full of napalm, heading across the sea to be loaded on the planes and be dropped upon the country to burn the skin off people beneath it at the time. They vowed to break the law to prevent a greater crime. They thought they'd spend their lives in prison, or more likely they would die. But Clyde and Al agreed that at least they had to try to sail to Cambodia with all the napalm as well, where it might remain forever, the bombs that never fell. They carried out their plan, and they didn't slip. Just two guns between them, but soon they ran the ship. They brought it to neutral waters by Sihanoukville, that these bombs might never be sent to maim and kill. But that's not how it ended. The next thing that they knew, Sihanouk was overthrown. There was a military coup. Clyde McKay died in the jungle with so many of his peers. In a California prison, Al Gladkowski spent 8 years. The ship was not off course by much more than a bit. The future of the Folly, perhaps they didn't change it. But while the blood was flowing and most people spent their days maybe marching in the streets or just joining the rat race. There are those among us who can say they really tried, who did everything they possibly could to stop the fratricide. If you see a big white beard on the Central Eastern shore, he might be a mutineer. who tried to stop the war. Gather round, I'll tell a story about a man I know, what he did across the ocean half a century ago. One of the tragic and confusing and real situations with humanity now and historically is that people hardly ever leave home and move to another country for reasons other than poverty and persecution. And then in so many cases, those people that are refugees coming to some other country as refugees end up becoming settlers. And this is the history of North America. It's the history of Israel. It's the history of Australia. This is a song about some of those Scottish refugees who settled Canada. Once upon a century, people lived above this glen. There were 50 houses here with parents and their children, but someone said they owned what those 4 generations had called their homes across the Scottish nation. Allotments kept on shrinking while the rent would only rise. One by one the broken crofters left the open skies, the frozen shores of Nova Scotia in a far-off colony, or somewhere else across the sea. Once upon a century, from the ways of old, from something like the golden rule to the rule of gold, it's just the logic of the market. Supply and demand says to drive the people from the land. Instead of eerie silence reverberating all around among the gardeners and shepherds, you would hear the sound of the pipes and drums and choirs of the songs that would be sung, and the stories that were told in the Gaelic tongue. Once upon a century, you'd never think it could, to turn into a field what had been a neighborhood. Once there were the promises of loyalty or clan, and then there was just profit if you can. If we travel back to a different time and space, it was possible for most to afford to live someplace. But it's the logic of the market, each investor's conviction. More money is just grounds for an eviction. Once upon a century, they cleared the highlands for the sheep. Most folks did not resist as the rent became too steep. They packed their things and moved, scattered far and near. You'd never know that they once were here. Just for the whims of capital, the biggest profits for the banks. You fight a war for empire, and clearance is your thanks. From the crofts of Scotland to the sidewalks of LA, if anything has changed, who can say? Once upon a century, people lived above this glen. There were 50 houses here with parents and their children.
Yeah.
We're all horrified well, I guess all of us really. 2 of us live in the U.S., one doesn't, but we're all horrified by by what's happening in the streets of this country. But there are some people that we'd all love to see deported, and
We know.
And there's a part for you to sing in this one. I'm sure you'll figure it out.
You say they're criminals, our neighbors came to raise their families, clean houses, drive trucks, work in factories. You round them up and take them off in military planes, carrying out your solemn vow back from where they came. But why is it always the poorest of the poor are the ones upon whom we're declaring war? And what if we took back what was never really theirs? Nationalize the banks and deport the billionaires. Could liberate the capital to invest in things we need. Housing, food, and healthcare, they've got it all indeed. It's all wrapped up in investments and shooting to the moon. And if things go as they're going, they'll have more of it soon. Why is it always the poorest of the poor are the ones upon whom we're declaring war? And what if we took back what was never really theirs? Nationalize the banks and deport the billionaires. Say you'll fix the rising prices that are making us all frown. If you deport our neighbors, maybe rents go down. But I've done the math, and scientists agree. If we nationalize those millions, we can all live here rent-free. Why is it always the poorest of the poor are the ones upon whom we're declaring war? And what if we took back what was never really theirs? Nationalize the banks and deport the billionaires. Nationalize the banks and deport the billionaires. Nationalize the banks and deport the billionaires.
Me and Kamala were in Mexico last March, and when I wrote this song 26 years ago, I thought if anything good comes of this song, among other things perhaps, we'll be all getting invited to sing at a festival in Mexico someday. I only had to wait 25 years and it happened. Some things you gotta wait for. My name is John Riley. I'll have your ear only a while. I left my dear home in Ireland. It was death, starvation, or exile. When I got to America, it was my duty to go. Enter the army and slog across Texas to join in the war against Mexico. It was there in the pueblos and hillsides that I saw the mistake I had made. Part of a conquering army with the morals of a bayonet blade. And there amidst all these poor dying Catholics, screaming children, the burning stench of it all, myself and 200 Irishmen decided to rise to the call. From Dublin City to San Diego, we witnessed freedom denied. So we formed the St. Patrick Battalion and we fought on the Mexican side. What'd we do? We formed the St. Patrick Battalion and we fought on the Mexican side. We marched beneath the green flag of St. Patrick, emblazoned with Erin Gobra, right with the harp and the shamrock, and Libertad Padre Republica. Just 50 years after Wolftown, 5,000 miles away, the Yanks called us a legion of strangers, and they can talk as they may. But from Dublin City to San Diego, we
witnessed freedom denied. So we formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side. We formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side.
You moved it.
Fought them in 5 major battles. Churubusco was the last. Overwhelmed by the cannons from Boston, we fell after each mortar blast. Most of us died on that hillside in the service of the Mexican state. So far from our occupied homeland, we were heroes and victims of fate. From Dublin City to San Diego, we witnessed freedom denied. So we formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side. From Dublin City to San Diego, we witnessed freedom denied. So we formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side. We formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side.
The main reason the U.S. decided it had to invade Mexico was that Mexico had abolished slavery, and that kind of put a sort of a fire under the ass of the slave-owning class of Texas to do something about the situation. And rather than liberate their slaves, they decided the thing to do was to invade Mexico. And but 30 years earlier, the same kind of thing happened, except the U.S. invaded Canada because Canada had already abolished slavery. But not only that, but they were harboring escaped enslaved people from the United States, and the U.S. military didn't like that, so they burnt down the capital city and residential homes as well as government buildings. But then 2 years later, because things happened slower back then, came the retaliation of the British Empire, and did not go well. It's good for the construction industry. Robert Ross was from Rostrep. He was born in County Down. His family was given land there by the British Crown. He was a man born of the gentry, born with wealth and fame, but he joined the British Army to serve his queen and make his name. In the Napoleonic Wars, he fought in many lands, in Holland and in Spain, in the far-off Egyptian sand. He was wounded there in battle, came back to fight another day, and he was sent off to attack the USA. York had been sacked and burned by invading Yankee men, but the Canadians regrouped, chased the Yankees home, and then the British Navy made its way to the shores of D.C. town, where General Ross burned the White House down. The year was 1814, the U.S. was in retreat. It was a Canadian victory, an American defeat. Without the French to help them, they got their ass whipped by the Crown when General Ross burned the White House down. The place had just been constructed only 12 years before, but it had to be rebuilt soon after this disastrous war. The president turned tail and ran like a raggedy clown.
when General Ross burned the White House down. He was killed a few months later. Irish rebels stopped him in his tracks. He was buried in Nova Scotia in the town of Halifax. He might have been forgotten, but he'll forever be renowned. He's the man who burned the White House down. He's the man who burned the White House down.
There's a wonderful book called One Last Drop, written by Riki Ott, and it was Riki got she got a PhD in marine toxicology somewhere in, I think, in California, and then she moved up to Alaska to be to fish, right in time for the Valdez oil spill. So she was a resident marine toxicologist there, taking on the Exxon Corporation, and living in the village of Cordova. And when the herring run never returned, there was quite a remarkable action taken that was barely covered in the news at the time.
I am a fisherman, so were my parents. Here in Cordova, on Prince William Sound, I'm not a tree hugger, but I love the mountains. And hauling in the gill net with the ocean all around. Life was good here. You could raise a family with 100,000 tons of herring sent out every year. 1989, the tanker grounded. Nothing's ever been the same around here. Senator Stevens said not one drop of oil would spill on Alaska's shores, and if it happened, it would be cleaned up. But our beaches were still covered, as was the ocean floor. 4 years passed, each run collapsed. It was then we knew for sure the herring weren't coming back. Exxon's promises of compensation were about as empty as a used-up paper sack. It was August 20th, 1993, when we fishermen decide something must be done. We packed some groceries, we made some banners, we headed out the Valdez Narrows. Beneath the midnight sun, 100 vessels took to the water, pushed through a storm and to the Valdez Sea. We lined up our boats, formed a blockade, and we waited for whatever might be. Approaching. It was a sight to see there in the twilight of the day. We saw it turning. We all cheered and cried as tanker after tanker after tanker turned away. A Coast Guard gunship from Seattle would take 3 days to get up to the Sound. We held the line till then we went back home to Cordova, to this hallowed oiled ground. I am a fisherman, so were my parents. Here in Cordova, on Prince William Sound.
So there's 3 songs that have been the the songs that I've gotten deleted from YouTube before they eventually just deleted my entire channel a few days ago. And this is one of the offending songs. This song, apparently I support a criminal organization with this song. But, one of the problems with supporting criminal organizations is if you oppose genocide committed by a state, which is a criminal organization such as Israel, and you support groups that are trying to stop the genocide, you are a terrorist supporter. And that's just a bit of a conundrum, because I think the terrorists are the one committing genocide, not the ones fighting back against it. That's obvious. It's also obvious under international law, but not according to US or UK law, under which Israel is just fine, and Ansar Allah in Yemen is the Houthi army are the terrorists. But I obviously have disagreements with these governments as well as with YouTube, and so the answer I get for that is no more YouTube. Half the world's trade passes by here. So much of it goes through Tel Aviv. Meanwhile, in the port of Gaza, no ship can arrive and not a boat can leave. While every day hundreds are dying beneath the rain of missiles fired from the air. Millions of starving Palestinians on the run and being slaughtered everywhere. No safe place in the Gaza Strip. No armies coming to defend. While all over the planet, people are asking, when will this savage bombing end? How many more thousands of children can be killed while we stand by? How can we just live our lives while we watch the babies die? Shukran jazilan to the Houthi army, standing for the conscience of us all. When they say no business as usual, while the bombs continue to fall. For a country that doesn't have an air force, they're painting black, red, green, and white on the helicopters they use to board the ships to show their cause is right. The president says this terrorism must stop right away, to which the Houthis respond, yes, that's exactly what we are trying to say. Shukran jazilan to the Houthi army, standing for the conscience of us all. When they say no business as usual, while the bombs continue to fall. Ships are going all the way around Africa to avoid the Houthi net. If Israel wants trading partners now, they might be just a little harder to get. We can blockade ports all over, north, south, east, and west. But the Houthi army are the ones who are no doubt blocking the traffic the best. Shukran jazilan to the Houthi army, standing for the conscience of us all. When they say no business as usual, while the bombs continue to fall.
update the Ann Feeney song to You Ain't Done Nothing Till You've Been Banned from YouTube?
Yeah.
You ain't done nothing. Yeah. You ain't done nothing until you've been banned from YouTube. Well, I don't know if somebody can maybe correct me, but as far as I know, the only artists other than me to have been deleted from YouTube, or to have all our albums also deleted from YouTube Music, it's just me, Screwdriver, and No Remorse, which are both British fascist bands that are overtly fascist, and like have names, songs like 6 Million Worthwhile Deaths or whatever the fuck, Yeah, me and them, because we're all anti-Semites for opposing Israel, apparently. But there must be some other offending artists out there in the world that they could target other than me and Screwdriver and No Remorse. I'd feel better with a little more company.
I nominate Drake.
I wrote this one when the campus occupation started, before they started deporting all of the organizers. It's happening now, and it has before, at the universities, in a time of war. Put people together, they'll communicate, talk about things like college and state, talk about the research that built the Iron Dome, talk about their relatives starving back at home, talk about tuition and where the money's spent and where all the buildings in Gaza went. Wake up each morning and the headlines say how many hundreds of Palestinians died today, how many thousands were killed in the past week. People get together, people speak, the newscasters say with surety the campuses lack security. Meanwhile, across the ocean wide, Palestinian genocide. People are saying they won't leave till they win, and then the police are sent in, beaten and arrested, staff and students, and try to silence this growing movement. They're punishing people for making it known that the direct connection can be easily shown. How the investments of this institution are funding another final solution. Where it goes is anyone's guess. After all, this is the U.S. Battles have been lost and won, but with bombs being dropped every day by the ton, the orphaned and vanished beneath the sky, waiting for the moment when it's their turn to die. Some people just can't look away. They have to set up a tent on the campus and say, boycott, sanction, and divest. 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 They all sang the Internationale for our last number. Well, it has been a great pleasure singing for you. Thanks so much to Andy for organizing this. Thanks so much to KMUD. Thanks to that lovely duo, 636, and those beautiful harmonies. Thanks to Chet Gardiner for coming all the way from Hawaii.
It's deductible.
I mean, Australia is further, but she does that more often, so I guess it feels like it. Yeah. Me and Kamala will be going to Germany in the spring, and we'll sing a song about that. Maybe I'll get arrested there for wearing this T-shirt. Seriously, it is illegal. Yeah. But and then if we don't get arrested for our T-shirts in Germany, that we can get arrested in England for holding up a sign that says "I support Palestine action." And if that doesn't work, we can go back to Australia and get arrested there for holding a sign saying "Globalize the Intifada."
Or from the river to the sea.
From the river to the sea, a geographical reference. How about like rolling plains? Maybe that's going to get you some slammer too.
Or you can go to Minnesota and you can belittle
Belittle an ICE officer. Get shot in the face. Yeah,
Yes,
that's
Well, lots of options. we
lots
can
of
choose.
options. Yeah. It's good. Katerina Jakob, long before she took that name, was organizing workers in Hamburg just the same. Organizing beneath the flag of deepest red, a new dawn of peace and freedom clearly shining in her head. Katerina Jakob first was sent to jail when the trappings of democracy all began to fail. She was frequently arrested in and out of custody while her first husband was in hiding from the Nazis. Katerina Jakob was acquitted of a crime, but the Gestapo had the last word. They weren't finished with her this time. She was sent to Ravensbrück, a killing hunger at her side. She heard of the execution, how her second husband died. For Katerina Jakob, the end was close at hand. She was on a death march with a ragged, starving band, marching through a forest, being led by the SS. What would happen hours later seemed impossible to guess. When the sun rose the next morning, it was the 1st of May, and they all sang the Internationale. They all sang the Internationale. Katerina Jakob thought about her children and the friends and comrades taking care of them, not knowing yet if any of them survived, not knowing that soon she'd see her daughters both alive. Katerina Jakob watched the German soldiers fleeing, streaming from the east, that's what she was seeing. Allied bombers flew above them, she thought they all might die, and then soon there was the silence of all the SS men. When the sun rose the next morning, it was the 1st of May, and they all sang the Internationale. They all sang the Internationale. Katerina Jakob saw red flags flapping in the breeze above the Russian tanks, and she fell upon her knees. And so many different voices in so many different tongues sang the most beautiful song that could ever have been sung. In German, Lithuanian, in Polish, and in Dutch, a myriad of melodies as never had been such. In Russian and in Yiddish, Italian and French, emerging from the forest beneath a trench. When the sun rose the next morning, it was the 1st of May, and they all sang the Internationale. When the sun rose the next morning, it was the 1st of May, and they all sang the Internationale. They all sang the Internationale. Völker, die Signale auf zum letzten Gefecht. Die Internationale erkämpft das Menschenrecht. Völker, die Signale auf zum letzten Gefecht. Die Internationale erkämpft das Menschenrecht.
of a kind experience. How incredible was that? Ministry of Culture. Oh my God, they're not ready to let you guys go. Thank you.
Another what? Like an old cloth torn and framed, it came like a clarion call to illustrate the saying, united we stand, divided we fall. A thin veneer torn by disease shredded the great con laid bare, come from across the seas, now floating in the air like a corpse that's being exposed, that all of us now can see, all that the cadaver shows about a society, a veil of fantasy lifted that gives us at least some idea how another world is possible. And I can hear her breathing now. Like the red blood that flows from the bullet, whether coated in rubber or not, like the faces you see in the helmet, reflecting the thickening plot, driven by such a villain, as a thing exponential allows, it says another world is possible. And I can see her breathing now. Like the pallor of so many faces on every end of the town, on the murals in so many places, boarded up and long ago shut down, making all the connections between the mule and the plow, that another world is possible. And I can hear her breathing now. Like the smoke rising up coast to coast, with formations that brighten the skies, like Lord Thomas Jefferson's ghost, his victims no longer disguise, as his visage falls into the river, like the skull of an old sacred cow that says another world is possible. And I can hear her breathing now. Another world is possible, and I can hear her breathing now. Another world is possible, I can hear her breathing now.
Ministry of Culture. Let's hear it for David Rovics, Kamala Emanuel, Chet Gardiner. Hey, we want to change the world, right? Well, maybe we should start by practicing and get them out for another song, huh? One more song, Ministry of Culture. Come on.
when the world has gone crazy, and it's all becoming clear, when they're gunning down our comrades, and it seems the end is near, as they're loading up the launchers for the tear gas grenades, we can take off our bandanas and kiss behind the barricades. When it's madness all around, and you can see this at a glance, we will sing and we will cry, we will laugh and we will dance. As they shout their marching orders beneath the helicopter blades, we shall seize the moment for a kiss behind the barricades. They will try to break our spirit, and at times they may succeed, but our love for the world is stronger than their greed. When the building is surrounded and hope begins to fade, in my final hour, a kiss behind the barricades. As the movement grows, there will be hills and bends, but at the center of the struggle are your lovers and your friends. And the more we hold each other up, the less we can be swayed. Here's to love and solidarity, and a kiss behind the barricades.